have Lenora Sneva, Max Brown, and Anna Moss with us today. Lenora Sneva is the Organizational Performance Director for the Office of Financial Management, where she collaborates and coaches leaders and staff on how to plan, communicate, and transition to new changes. She is also a member of the One Washington Organizational Change Management Advisory Team and the Washington Resilience Group. For 12 years, she has worked for the state, and she holds a master's in public administration from the University of Washington. Her free time is consumed with family, being a volleyball mom, and recommitting to daily exercise. Max has worked in state government for over 8 years and is currently the program manager for the Washington Resilience Group, which is working to improve service delivery across state government. Over his career, Max has worked for 4 different agencies in multiple positions with a focus on enterprise initiatives and strategic planning. In his spare time, Max spends time with his wife, 4 kids, and chocolate lab while trying to get in rounds of golf. Anna Moss is the Organization Performance Manager for the Washington State Office of Financial Management. In this role, she collaborates with and advises leaders and employees on how to plan, communicate, and transition to new changes. She also manages the strategic plan and an internal continuous improvement team and co-leads a statewide organizational change management community of practice. Anna holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and is certified in Lean Six Sigma and ProSci change management. Take it away, Lenora, Max, and Anna.
All right, thank you. So yeah, my name is Lenora Sneva, and I'm here with Anna Moss and Max Brown, and we work together for the Organization Strategy Performance team inside the Office of Financial Management. Today, we are going to chat about the benefits of gathering and using customer feedback for successful change. We will also share equitable best practices while working with customers and our lessons learned in seeking and implementing customer feedback. Throughout our discussion today, we are going to provide real examples to highlight these key concepts. But first, let's get to know you with a poll. So I think we're gonna put a poll up, which just kind of asks you, which of the following best describes your work? So go ahead and choose one that best fits you. And we'll keep it open for a couple more seconds.
This is really just our way to test who's actually, of our 510 participants, who's paying attention.
Right? There is a plethora of people here, though, for sure.
There sure is. And it keeps getting bigger.
It does. Do you want to go ahead and close the poll and let's look at the results for that one? All right, so it looks like we have a lot of continuous improvement practitioners mostly, and then some customer service and supervisors and other. Okay, awesome. We have one more poll we want to put up, and that one is asking, is your team willing to implement customer developed solutions? Which one? Absolutely, sort of, or not yet? All right. I don't know if people are taking it or not. I'm just assuming that we're good. So let's go ahead and close it. See what the results are. So it looks like 59% of you. So over half of you say absolutely. Your team is doing customer developed solutions. That's pretty cool. And then sort of, I think that's kind of where we are too at OFM. We're working on it. All right, thank you so much for the polls. Thank you for taking that. So we also wanted you to get to know us a little bit more. I know we read our bio, but so we're just going to tell you a little bit more about us and how we're going to do this discussion today. So I'm again Lenora, and I'm an extrovert, and I love waffles, and I'm super interested in not using PowerPoint today. So this has made one person on our team a little uncomfortable, and that's okay.
but that should be part of the game. Like, figure it out by the end of today. Figure out who that one person was that was uncomfortable with doing this.
Figure out who it is. So yes, there's no PowerPoint. We're just gonna have a conversation and kind of go back and forth and just talk about customer feedback. I think the unique thing about our team is that Anna does more of the internal customer feedback gathering, and Max has been focusing on external. So we'll have really good examples to hopefully help you see how to implement either. Anna, did you want to share a little bit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Moss, and I'm an organization performance manager with the Office of Financial Management, working with Max and Lenora. And, I'm not going to make people guess or wait till the end. I will come right out and say that I am the person that was, kind of like, oh, okay, let's do something new. Let's try it. So excited for our discussion today. And for those of you that know me, I'm very much a PowerPoint person. So this is a new experience and growth opportunity for me. So excited to be here today, and I will turn it over to Max.
I'm Max Brown, so way to give up the ghost there, Anna. I'm the program manager for the Washington Resilience Group. So as Lenore had mentioned, kind of focus more on the external side of customer feedback. Is more within my wheelhouse. And I think, is it all right? Can I give the disclaimer now, Lenora?
Yeah, go
right?
ahead.
Yeah, like Lenora said, hey, we should do this lean conference presentation about gathering customer feedback. This was like 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago. And I was like, no, we're not ready. We're not, like, I don't think this is like, I've worked at Results Washington. I've helped put on the lean conference. I've attended a lot of the sessions, and I usually come to them with that. You look at the menu of options and you go, who's got a really cool success story? Who am I going to learn from? Who did something that reflects something I'm trying to do, that I can learn their expertise and, how they did it perfectly. And that's not us. Like, we're just full disclaimer, like, we are going to show you a lot of the nitty gritty, the things that didn't go well, like my facial hair, the imperfections that are on display. And we're just going to tell you how it kind of went. And hopefully the other piece we hope that leaves you walking away with is, you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to have it figured out for you to try something new, and to really learn something about the process that you can apply as you keep going. And it doesn't have to be, it does not have to be fully planned out. You don't need a PowerPoint to do it. You can just enter in and have these conversations. So that's kind of our full disclosure disclaimer before we dive in today.
All right, thank you, Max. So I'm gonna, like some people like to read the end of the book before they start the book. I don't like to do that, but some people do, right?
It's not me. I don't.
I'm going to tell you the key points that we're going to make for the next, 45 minutes or so. So the key points about customer feedback and gathering that is, be prepared to implement. Think about who isn't in the room. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to be intentional. And value your customers with compensation. All right, so those are our key points that we're going to talk about. And when I think about the projects that we've been working on, there's been so many, and some of them have been successful and others have been really challenging to implement. But the best projects that I can think about were when there was really clear buy-in from the leader. Yep. Max, you've been a part of the WRG, the Washington Resilience Group, for over a year now. Mm-hmm. This group has been focused on pandemic recovery for the state, and recently conducted customer feedback chats outside of the offices of DSHS, ESD, and LNI. What were your strategies to gain buy-in to do that work?
Yeah, no, I think, I was kind of like, just went with fondue and just dunked right into the middle of this, because I kind of landed halfway in between where this started, so to speak. The Washington Resilience Group was created about 2 years ago, as you said, as kind of a pandemic response. And the pitch I usually gave for people was, about the time that this was created, there was this vaccine that was on the way. We were thinking that we might be at the end of it, and we were really trying to figure out, how do we kind of get back to whatever the new normal is for state government. And I'll just be blunt, like a lot of things in state government, we created this work group without necessarily taking a really good look at the landscape of what else was happening in state government and where there might be other fits and avenues. So that's one thing I think a lesson learned. Just look at the landscape of state government, because we end up oftentimes creating new things because we don't really know what's happening. Right. But I got there about a year in, and that was kind of our assessment was, hey, two of the big problems that were kind of being discussed by that group were we're going to lose a lot of nurses after this pandemic ends due to burnout, and it's going to have a huge impact on our healthcare system. How do we prepare for providing, replenishing that workforce? Turns out there's a nursing commission that the Department of Health had that was developing a kind of a roadmap for apprenticeship to get people from the beginning process of like getting your foot in the door as a nurse all the way up to becoming a PhD. Like they're building out that whole process. So we kind of stepped back there. Then the other one was, well, during the pandemic, a lot of families stepped back from their work lives to take care of kids. I'm one of them. That's why I'm in the office today, so that I wasn't at home at 3 o'clock when 3 of my 4 kids showed up screaming and distracting everybody. And but how do we make sure we have childcare workers so that people can go back into the workforce and their kids are able to be taken care of? Well, turns out there's a legislative task force that was created to do that. And there was a huge investment in the last legislative session. So we kind of stepped off of that too. And we kind of looked around at the room and went, we've lost, because we've kind of gone down these paths of initiatives that were already created, we lost some engagement from our high level leaders. And we kind of had to ask, what's in it for me, right? I think that's the question you've always got to ask when trying to bring people to the table is, what's in it for them? And it's a super simple question. And for us, it was finding something that was cross agency, that didn't just, it's not just one project that one agency can work on in a silo,
Right.
but something that requires multiple people and something that wasn't being addressed. And we knew that customer service delivery during the pandemic took a massive hit. No one was looking to state government before then going, let's steal that model and bring it over to the private sector. Like, we're not known for our great service delivery. And we just kind of made that pitch to the leaders and saying, we know this is an area that you don't have a ton of support from other leaders to be able to learn from each other, to be able to grow, to be able to ask questions in a kind of a safe space. And that was kind of the what's in it for them, to bring them to the table. And I think regardless of the project, you've got to be able to address that question for your leaders in order for them to show up and participate.
All right, thank you, Max.
Yeah.
Anna, at OFM, you've had an internal customer feedback focus. You've been conducting focus groups and polls and surveys to really understand customer ideas. How are your strategies? What are your strategies to gain buy-in from leaders? What tools do you use?
Yeah, thanks, Lenora. So, I want to start by saying that I agree with Max. I think it's really important to address the question of what's in it for me from a leader's perspective with respect to gathering and implementing customer feedback. And I think part of answering that question is really understanding, how do I need to frame the business case or the value proposition for seeking and implementing customer feedback in a way that's going to resonate with the leader that I'm working with. And I think, something that has helped me in this space is that, as you mentioned, I primarily right now I'm focused on seeking internal customer feedback. And so typically speaking, I'm pretty familiar with the leaders within our agency. And I think that that's helpful with determining the what's in it for me question. But I think just some other strategies that I want to mention today are, making sure that we're explaining the importance and benefits of seeking customer feedback and really focusing on the people that we're serving, because ultimately we want to ensure that our products, our services, and our processes really work for our customers and that they're receiving what they need and what they want from us. And this also, to me, includes addressing, what happens if we don't seek customer feedback? What happens if we just continue operating with the status quo and the detriments of doing that? I think another strategy that's been helpful to us internally is engaging peers. So if we are suggesting that a leader seek customer feedback about a given process or a service, sometimes it's helpful. It's great when I can kind of have a one-on-one conversation and explain, the benefits and the importance, but I think it's also important to have a leader's peer who's, fully bought in to seeking customer feedback and has implemented feedback from customers within their division to kind of share their stories with their peers. What worked well, what could it be done, differently in the future to improve best practices, lessons learned. And I think the other piece is also providing, qualitative and quantitative data. So, let's hear from the employees who are, working directly with these processes and products and providing service delivery, and, hearing their voices to build the case for buy-in. And then I think the two, other things I want to mention, and Max, go ahead.
No, I was gonna jump in because I think you hit on something that's really that we learned through the Washington Resilience Group that you hit on is it's in this cliche, sorry, but what's good for our customers is good for our staff. What we kind of learned in this was oftentimes, right, the problems that we were hearing about. It wasn't, you can hear about them from customer service staff. You can hear it from the direct, the frontline staff, but it's also the same problems that our customers are experiencing. And a good example is, you might have a customer who does not fully understand the whole process of something. And because it's unclear because of the way that we provide the service. And so they're calling back multiple times, which leads to long wait times, which leads to frustrated customers. And it's that if we had done a better job of listening to the need of the customer and providing something that worked for them, how much less stress and pressure that would put on our staff who are dealing with, 3+ hour wait times. Because who wants to get the person on the phone that's been on hold for 3 hours?
Right.
Like that's like no one's like, yeah, it's bring them over to my queue. And I think we have to be responsive to knowing that what we do when we make improvements for our customers, it also helps our staff.
Right. So there's a couple of comments in the chat that I wanted to recognize. Philip asked, does the panel agree leadership buy-in can be essential to implementation, but ground level frontline input is essential to meaningful changes that bring about real improvements? And I feel like you kind of just answered that question, right? Like you definitely want to make sure, you're touching
threw up a
base
softball.
Yeah, absolutely. Another a thumbs up for no PowerPoint. So there we go. Thank you, Joanna. And then I think it's Davida said, what happens when the customer idea competes with supporting employee ideas? Customers want to come into an office, staff want to work from a home location. Max, do you want to jump in on that one?
No, but I will. I think that's a really and this kind of gets to one of the things we wanted to chat about too, and maybe I'm going to steal some of Anna's thunder here, but is one of the points we wanted to make in our conversation today was don't seek customer input unless you're actually willing to act on it. And I think that's a great example of what if that suggestion that your customer brings to you, you're either you as a leader or you as a staff member are like, yeah, but it's just not gonna I'm not down with that. And I don't know, and to be blunt, I don't know if we came up with a great answer during our perspective in how we wanted to achieve this, but I think one of the big takeaways that we might have is, so let's take that example. I'm gonna wing it here on that staff who want to work at home, customers who want to come into an office. I think what we kind of learned through our experience was oftentimes people are showing up at offices because our other systems are not good. Right. Like the way our online forms are confusing, the wait times are too long. So showing up into an office for them is just an easier process. What we also heard from people in our conversations was like the demographics of who showed up in an office changed over the course from prior to the pandemic to during the pandemic. It just shifted. And so one of the components that we kind of thought through was, it may be that less staff are needed in the office more consistently if we were able to address other issues around the complexity of our online systems or the confusion around them or the long wait times. We had literally interviewed customers who were like, I was on the phone for too long. And so I just drove into the office and got my thing done. Like that, it was just, that's all that was. And so people are changing their behaviors to show up in an office because our other systems don't work for them. So I think there's also kind of a question behind that question of, well, what could we do to maybe help limit the number of interactions we have to have in an office? Because I don't think our customers always want to do that either. It's just, it's easier than the other processes that we have. And we need to continue to explore and ask those questions.
Thank you, Max. All right. So a lot of people are like, we want you to, Anna, to finish. So Anna, continue talking. Please.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you for those great points, Max. So, a couple of the other things I just wanted to mention in terms of leadership buy-in is I think that we've kind of started to see success with this concept of starting small and building. And what I mean by that is, as Lenora mentioned at the start of today's presentation, from an agency perspective, I would say we're kind of in that sort of category as far as, implementing customer developed solutions. And I think one way that we've been able to get some more leadership buy-in is, let's take it small. Let's evaluate, a very, I'm going to say maybe smaller process or a process that's not quite as large as kind of just a starting point. And let's walk through a really comprehensive customer feedback exercise and then continue to build from there, expanding to additional processes, additional services, additional products. Maybe instead of kind of just tackling everything all at once, I think has been a strategy where we've been successful. And I think it's also helpful from a modeling perspective because one of our divisions internally is having each unit seek customer feedback, but it's going kind of unit by unit. And so that way, everyone's able to kind of learn from each other, kind of able to get familiar with the process, has time to kind of adapt from a change management perspective. And so I think that that's one strategy I would also mention. And then the final thing that I just wanted to say is, for me, when I think about customer feedback, I also think about change, because I think when we customer feedback, oftentimes, we're asking a variation of kind of two key questions, what's working well that we want to continue? And then secondly, what are the opportunities for improvement, or how can we do better? And to me, the second question there is really synonymous with there's going to be change in some form. Mm-hmm. And we all know that, change is uncomfortable for most people. And, it's something new, it's something different. And so I like to bring in some kind of organizational change management framework into the conversations with leaders. And so I'm going to put a link in the chat momentarily. Let's see.
And I was going to ask you, Anna,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we've seen in this work and in other works is that we'll get leaders who kind of waffle on their actual buy-in to something. And they're like, oh yeah, would love to implement customer feedback. And then they get the feedback and they're like, we got other stuff, we got other priorities. And so what have you done to kind of help maybe, work through that maybe uncertainty where you have a leader who says one thing, but you're not quite sure they're actually committed to it, to get a better sense of, yep, this person is actually ready? Because I think you put it right, like it's change management, and you can kind of assess whether someone's prepared or not. What's the method, or how do you go about kind of that assessment?
Yeah, thanks, Max. And I think my immediate thought as you were asking the question is that this really comes from some lessons learned in this space for me. Because, typically, if somebody says, Anna, we're really interested in having you help and lead a customer feedback effort, there's some level of buy-in there. However, as you said, Max, I think sometimes conceptually, when we think about, am I open and willing to implement customer developed solutions? Absolutely yes. But what I've tried to do to address kind of the situation that you're referring to is I try to also kind of make it more real, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is, as an example, if we're going to be evaluating our communication methods as an agency, let's say maybe we want to better understand, how do employees want to receive information? Maybe right now we're primarily using all staff emails or recorded videos, and we just want to understand, is that really how employees want to receive information? So a question I might ask to the leader who's responsible for communications might be, if employees were overwhelmingly to say, we no longer want to receive all staff emails, we would prefer to receive information via kind of live monthly addresses from the leadership team. Or maybe we want a monthly newsletter. What would your reaction to that be?
Yeah.
And I think, it kind of opens up a good dialogue, because typically when I've posed questions like that, I think it provides an opportunity to pause.
Yeah.
And then it kind of is thinking about, okay, what would my response be in that instance? Because maybe as the leader, I'm thinking, oh, I know what people are going to say, and I'm prepared to do that.
Yeah.
So I think just providing kind of the what could happen for folks, to number one, kind of again, just assess their readiness to change. And that kind of leads into the resource I put in the chat. So if you open this link, what you'll be taken to is a presentation that Lenora and I provided at a past Lean conference. And if you look at slide 13.
Oh.
Slide 13, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's going to show the Kubler-Ross change model.
Okay.
All right, we'll keep going
Yeah.
here.
Well, and I was going to say something
Mhm.
to kind of highlight what Anna had mentioned and tie it in. Oh, there we go.
Oh, go ahead.
And tie it into, we lost you there for a second, Anna, so we're just going to roll with it. We heard like slide 13 and then it just kind of cut. Do you want to go back from where you were?
Nope. Thanks, Max, for letting
Okay.
me know. Yeah, I just I got the unstable connection.
Okay.
I'm like, oh no. So yeah, so slide 13 is labeled the change curve, and what this is just a visual depiction of the William Bridges transition model overlaid with the Kubler-Ross change curve, which both essentially describe kind of the normal natural responses to change. And so just going through this, really briefly, and I'm happy to answer questions, later on and following today's presentation. But, we start with kind of ending, losing, and letting go when change happens. So, it's often kind of that maybe folks going into shock or denial, maybe some confusion, trying to understand, why is this happening? Because again, we're being forced to let go of something we're comfortable with, and then moving into ultimately the neutral zone, which is really where, we've kind of worked through, the various emotions that happen when change is presented, to include maybe some anxiety and resistance. And now we're kind of thinking about, what does this mean for me as an individual? What are the possibilities, and how can this look going forward? And then ultimately moving into kind of that acceptance phase. And the final stage of the change curve is the new beginning. And this is really where we have that acceptance and commitment of the change. Folks are on board. They have the skills and knowledge able to succeed. So the reason that I like to talk about this is because, again, it's change. And I think normalizing the response to change is important. And then depending on where folks are in this change curve, then we can develop a pretty specific strategy. So if somebody's in, for example, ending, losing, and letting go, a question I might ask to a leader are, what concerns do you have with seeking and implementing customer feedback? How can we eliminate those barriers and get to yes?
Yeah.
So just a couple of examples of how this can be helpful.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a lot of questions in the chat.
Are we taking Jocelyn's? Are we taking Jocelyn's?
Right, we
Yes.
are, because we're actually, so again, we've got these 4 key points that we want to make, and I'm loving all the activity on the chat and then also in the room. But again, be prepared to implement. Who isn't in the room?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated, but intentional, and you need to value your customers with compensation. So some of these questions that I'm seeing, I think we're going to answer them. So just hold tight.
Yeah.
The next one that we're going to talk about. So Max, when we were building the charter for the
No.
WRG,
No. Let's. Did you see Jocelyn's question? There's like,
I think
there's
it's
like a
gonna
whole
answer.
No, let's just do it. She's got a
Okay.
great question, and I think this is when we were arguing about this yesterday, actually, in our prep.
We weren't arguing.
Yes, we were.
Okay,
We were having
so
a great
Jocelyn-
conversation.
Jocelyn is I'm interested in what kinds of questions are helpful to ask customers. I worry about asking leading or useless questions. So Max, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure.
You want
Well,
to answer
well, we
this?
talked. Well, this is kind of what we talked about yesterday.
We
Was
did
like,
talk about this. Yeah.
we did. There's multiple ways to take this approach, and we talked about kind of probably having at least two pieces of this process, and sometimes it makes more sense to do one step before the other. Sometimes it's vice versa. We were talking about doing like just a broad general survey that has kind of yes or no kind of questions, or ranking questions, but not open-ended. And the reason we thought about that was more, sometimes you have some kind of general ideas about a process or a customer experience that you're trying to improve, and you maybe have some assumptions that you're trying to validate. You're just trying to figure out, like, am I getting this wrong? Am I missing this? And just try to get some blanket information, and then find patterns and find the areas where you thought were maybe that surprised you, or areas where there was a high level of agreement or disagreement, to kind of figure out what's that next step. And that next step could honestly be focus groups, working, or one-on-one interviews with people, to start asking those more open-ended questions, to allow people the space to provide feedback. And so, and on the flip side, Lenore was sharing a time when she did it the other way, by starting with focus groups and then going to a survey, when maybe you just don't, like, you're asked to work on a project that you've got no context for, like brand new group, brand new program, you just got thrown in the deep end, and you're like, I don't even know what this is about. And so maybe taking that approach works well. And we kind of mentioned that, like, start with the end in mind to a degree. What problem are you trying to solve?
Right.
And that should lead you to the questions that aren't useless. They're the, how would you best like to, like for Anna's example, what's the best way you'd like to receive this information? What's the most frustrating part of the way you do it now? Ask some of those questions maybe in an open-ended way after you've done this, but I think you can do surveys to get patterns, and then focus groups to get details.
And I also would add, I had a thought, it's just escaping me. I also would just add, though, like, when you're doing the focus groups, sometimes, like Max said, you can dig a little bit deeper, and that's what's nice. And so when Max did the WRG work, we did, and Anna, I think, created the survey, but we actually created a survey that had like a lot of yes and no's and some open-ended questions. I think we had over 2,200 responses from a lot, like, this was just a state employee kind of survey, people that do customer service work. So we had a lot of good information, which is great if you have the resources to actually go and analyze it. So that's why sometimes doing a survey with yes or no, or strongly agree to strongly disagree, is kind of helpful if you don't have a lot of people there to analyze the work. And it does point you out to like a trend or something like that. And then you can do your focus group and dig a little bit deeper on the actual question. And then I think the other point, I remember the big point I wanted to make was, and I think Anna and Max, you kind of said this too, but make sure when you're developing your questions that you involve your customer somehow. Yeah. So let them either, maybe it's the management team, and it's program managers, and it's customer service staff, and it's lean practitioners, and you're all in a room and you're thinking about the problem and then thinking about the outcome and what you really want to know, and you're developing your questions. But make sure that your customer sees those questions before you go live. Like, whether it's you stand outside the office and as people are coming in, they kind of see it and you compensate them for that. Or you're on the phone with them and you kind of just clarify. I don't know, but you got to make sure that you're going in the right direction, that people won't be confused by your questions. Yeah. Anna, do you have anything else to add to that? Or
no, go for it, Anna.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's been certainly an area of lessons learned for the internal work we've done around customer feedback, because I think, typically questions have been generated myself in partnership with the subject matter experts or the individuals who are really kind of hosting the focus group or the survey. And we're really moving more towards this model, Lenora, as you talked about, where, we're involving customers. And I think it's, definitely something we need to do and continue to do. And I think what we've found as well is, sometimes I may ask a question and I think that, it's going to generate information that really is going to help us achieve the objectives that we're striving for. And then kind of you look at the question and you get feedback, and either maybe your question doesn't make sense, or maybe it generates information that really isn't what you're looking for from an objectives point of view. And so I think that's just a really key point.
Yeah, and I think what I was gonna say is that's what we learned and I want to kind of share a little bit about our process, because I'm seeing some questions here that sort of address what we're trying to get at, which is we part of our process was we went to Yakima, Tacoma field offices outside of DSHS, LNI, ESD to get information from customers and just ask questions. And I think that's one of the points we want to make, is it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, we literally just showed up outside of an office and talked to customers. But we've got to be intentional about the question. So we didn't just show up and be like, scale 1 to 5, how was your experience today? Cool, bye. Actually have some questions in mind that you can think through, that you're trying to really dig into as you're doing that piece. And in addition to that, what we learned was, to that point about like, ask your customers to help you with this, with the questions. About 5 people in, we realized that the way we worded some questions was not landing on our customers the way that we had anticipated. And so if we had had some more time to kind of think through and ask the questions of other people and how they might respond to it, especially people who aren't government people, would have led to a better outcome. And I see this is another part of our process that we want to just kind of highlight. This last legislative session, there was a bill passed, Senate Bill 5793, that is kind of in its implementation phase. It's a bill that allows agencies to pay customers for their experience and their expertise in gaining feedback. Essentially, the concept, it's pretty simple, right? Like, we pay consultants to provide us feedback and to help us facilitate and do work with us. Now we can pay customers who have lived experience when we're asking them for feedback on our processes and things of that nature. So we used gift cards. We purchased gift cards with our permission from our finance team to pay people for their time in filling out our surveys. And the Office of Equity is working on finalizing the guidance for agencies to do this. But we're kind of getting to that place now where we realize a lot of the customers that we're trying to talk to don't have extra time to just hang out with us. They're not paid for it. They might have to take time off of work or find childcare. Their experience isn't free. But that's how we've treated it in the past, especially with nonprofits, where maybe that's okay and it's kind of an expectation of their job. But what we want to do now, and is available for agencies to do, is actually compensate people for their time. And I think for a lot of people, I've heard this about issues of equity and systemic racism and people who aren't able to participate historically in our systems. This is one of those barriers that we're trying to remove by compensating people, by showing up at offices and not going just to the known entities. And so this is a tool at the disposal of agencies now to get more feedback from clients. And we would really encourage you to talk with your finance teams, check in with the Office of Equity, well, maybe not bombard them with emails, but take a look at the legislation 5793 and see how that might apply to your program and how you may try to gather feedback from customers. Sorry, that was my soapbox. Sorry.
That's okay. Anna, did you want to add anything to that? Can you talk to us a little bit? Because there was a question there about, okay, I want to hear more about how Anna's doing internal customer feedback gathering. Can you talk a little bit about how to not make it complicated, but sometimes it's complicated, and then also about compensation?
Sure. And I think that this is a great key point, and I really just gravitate to the phrase intentional. And I say that because I think, one of the areas that we're really trying to put an emphasis on when we talk about internal customer feedback efforts is, I think traditionally there's a lot of emphasis and focus on the process of seeking customer feedback, and maybe a little bit less focus on, okay, we have the feedback, now how are we going to implement and how are we going to follow through with our customers? And so I say that because, I think that that's, from a being intentional point of view, really having a project plan or a work plan is something that we typically do, where we kind of outline roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, when are we gonna do things and how. And that includes, ensuring that we follow through with our customers, to kind of say, thank you for your feedback. We really do value your input, and this is how we're using it to make positive change. And so I think an example that comes to mind for me, and this kind of also speaks to a key point I want to make, which is really moving from kind of a, maybe we seek customer feedback initially, and then we go forth and we implement, and we don't check back in. And so I think ensuring we follow this, continuous improvement best practice of, kind of doing the 30, 60, 90-day check-in, or a variation of that. And so one example would be, we recently offered a focus group and survey opportunity internally for OFM employees to provide feedback about one of our programs. And following the survey and focus group, we summarized the results, shared that with the leader, and developed an implementation plan. And then we also shared that plan with all OFM employees. And the reason behind that is, number one, we want to demonstrate our commitment to customer feedback and implementation. And then secondly, really create a culture of feedback internally, kind of with this goal that, if employees really see that we are taking the feedback and we are implementing, then that will generate, continued participation in future feedback opportunities. And in this particular instance, we're also trying something that's relatively new, which is we're going to incorporate and involve employees every step of the way in implementation. So one of the suggestions, as an example, was to create a new intranet page. We're going to have employees directly involved in that work to ensure that we're doing our best to move to kind of a. Did my connection break up?
Yeah, you're okay though.
You're okay.
Okay. And so really moving towards a co-creation model, I think, is something else that we're really striving to do. And Lenora, I know you asked about compensation. So in terms of compensating internal OFM employees, what we've started to do is offer, assuming that there's funds available, a couple of gift cards for focus group participants. So essentially, individuals who agree to participate in a focus group for a given customer feedback initiative are entered into an opportunity to win a gift card for their participation. We really want to honor employees' time and really value their input. And so that's something that we've started to do.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing that. I see a question from, I think it's David, and he's saying, how do you establish best practices in terms of sample size, location in the state of Washington, and ethnic groups? Anybody want to jump in and answer that one, or just kind of think about, like, so what it makes me think about, I guess, is, Max, I know that when you went out, you and I went out to talk to people. I don't know if we necessarily had a goal of how many people we're going to talk to, but we did have, I don't know, I think at least 100 gift cards or something like that. And were there any reasons why we picked certain locations over other locations as far as like demographics?
Yeah, I think for us, what we wanted to look at was, we know that different parts of the state have different demographic groups. And if we had just stayed in Thurston County, it's not representative of the whole. We wanted to look at something that was closer to Eastern Washington. And like Yakima is kind of on the cusp, I would say, but also a more Spanish speaking population as well, because we wanted to better understand if there might be gaps in services for our Spanish speaking clients. And then we also went to Tacoma, which just has a little bit more urban environment and demographically more diverse than Thurston County. But we could keep going to different areas and populations. And I think, I know DSHS, for example, has a very robust research and data analysis group that can pull data to help determine some of those components. Who are our clients? Where are they coming from? where, which offices are they going to participate in? I don't think I mean, RDA is kind of like, they have a lot of resources compared to some of the smaller agencies, but it could also be just a good way to look at census data, which OFM provides, to really better understand, are we capturing more of our clients? And just, talking with your supervisors, talking with your division leads to figure out who is, what do our clients generally look like? Where are they calling in from,
Right.
or where are they accessing services, and trying to reach those populations. And that was the next kind of phase. Is we did in person, but that's one way we do service. We also do it over the phone and over and online. And those are different demographics, different people, people groups that we could try to reach and do more to understand their experience.
Thank you, Max. I see another question that was posted. The importance of customer feedback, but when, well, the importance of customer is very important, but when there is limited frontline staff, customers get very frustrated. Seasonal, part-time employees do not typically know or value customers' feedback. Anna, do you want to maybe jump in on that one? What are your thoughts?
And just to make sure I understand the question, it's when we have seasonal or part-time employees. And
yeah, what I think when I'm looking at this question, what I was thinking was, it's almost like, who's going to do the work?
Yeah.
Who's going to ask? And so I think because Anna and Max, you have, kind of unique, somewhat of a unique position within an agency. I think you're definitely our go-to people when we want to do any kind of customer feedback gathering. But I would think if you were, just kind of like thinking about any kind of agency, I don't know, talk to your lean practitioners. I would definitely start there, just because they're kind of used to doing the Gembas and going out to talk to people about the new process, finding out why the process doesn't work and trying to fix what bugs you. So I would start there. If you've got some ideas, if you want to do some customer feedback gathering, I would say talk to your lean people.
And I think to the leaders in the room, I think you put it really well, Lenora. This is kind of a who question. I would not put it on your frontline staff to do the customer feedback gathering for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
One, obviously, if you're a client showing up to get services from somebody, there's a power dynamic inherent in that. And if you don't have a good experience, are you really going to tell that person? Because it may impact the benefits, because you don't understand the process. So I would really, I would not put this on frontline staff to do that kind of work. But I think it's important for us to ask the questions to our customers that are working with frontline staff. But the survey cards, I think you've got to be able to separate it a little bit more, and also have enough time to ask some deeper questions that probably can't be done in a 30-second interaction. And so I would really caution from making this something that frontline staff are responsible for doing.
Yeah, I think, what I would just add is, it kind of takes me back to my first position in state service, which was as a customer service specialist. And I really kind of gravitate to the phrase Lenora said, which is fix what bugs you. And so I think there is an opportunity, to kind of take note of, kind of common pain points that are, being experienced by customers, any questions to why a process is a certain way, and just bringing those questions forward to, your direct supervisor and lean practitioners, as Lenora mentioned, to really evaluate, from a process improvement standpoint, what can we do to move forward?
Mm-hmm. See another question from, I think it's Nikolai. What resources do we have for ensuring that customer feedback surveys are available in multiple languages and accessible through multiple mediums, online, phone, paper? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
We're not good at it. Like straight up, we're not good at it. I mean, good example, when we went to Yakima, we had clients who showed up, who spoke Spanish, who we were asking the surveys through the person, like a family member who came with them to do the interpretation. Like, we did not think that far ahead, and that was totally on us. And it's something that we're trying to do more and more of, is figure out how do we make sure that we're prepared for all of those circumstances. And I think this is a big conversation that we're having in other pockets of the state as well, is interpretation. Because right now, a lot of times it's like, we'll just use Google Translate, and it's not accurate, it's not helpful. And so I would say this is one of those, we don't have a good answer for how we do it well, but I would say that it's a problem that's been identified that people are trying to figure out how to improve. And I would say keep asking that question, because this is something we need to do better at.
I would just jump into, because I'm the equity officer for OFM, and part of the pair work that we're working on is we created a pair statement that we're going to post online. But before we post it, we also need to get it translated into 6 languages. And so we do have master contracts with the state. The state of Washington has master contracts with probably 6 vendors who will take your documents and translate them for you at a cost. So that information, that resource is available if your department, unit, division has the money to pay for it. But it is possible to do it, and they've got a pretty quick turnaround too. All right. I'm assuming we've got 4 more minutes to go. Yeah, I think we're probably ready for a chat of follow. So we're trying to see if there's anything else in here that we could quickly answer.
I kind of think we might have missed one of our points, or not expanded on it.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
Lenora, I'm going to ask it to you, which is,
Oh.
how do we deal when you're doing this kind of work and you look around and everybody looks like me? What's kind of the method, or how did you go about approaching that problem, to be honest?
Well, I think when I think about the WRG and the work that we were doing, and really just trying to reach out to community partners, I just Googled.
Can you define community partners too? Like, who does that mean for you?
Community partners are like usually like nonprofits or stakeholders that an agency has a connection to. And we realized that even when we started the WRG work, we really wanted to make sure that we were using an equity lens in all that we did. And so we made sure that we actually had a DEI advisor as a part of the team. That was Megan Matthews. So that was really helpful, because she was like the voice in the room. So anytime we were talking about a new thing, she would raise her hand and kind of get us back in line again. Like, well, what about so-and-so? What about this group? And then I also think when we were thinking about customer service delivery, we really wanted to talk to people, but we really didn't know what to do first. So one of our first steps, again, was to do the survey to customer service specialists. One of the questions that we asked them was, hey, have you used state services? The other thing that we did was we just kind of Googled nonprofits and ones that had an ethnic tie, and then just called them, and 3 of them said, yeah, you can talk to us. And so we did focus groups that way. And then we went out to different areas around the state to also talk to people. I see Rachel has got on, so that probably means that we should stop talking.
I have to say one final thing, because there was this great little comment. I'm sorry, this is the problem with this conversation, because it could last forever. But someone had mentioned it's a great way not just to get problem-solving tools, but to help connect you with your customers and build trust. And I think one of the things that we learned here too is it builds trust when you implement. But a lot of community partners and our customers it's kind of the been there, done that. We've told you our feedback and you never did anything about it. So that's really that key. Really be prepared. If you want to ask for customer feedback, be ready to implement it. Otherwise, it actually can do more harm than good, especially with communities that have historically been marginalized by government. That's it.
All right, so I think our Chatterfall question as we close out, what's one thing you are going to do differently? Oh, they put it in there. So go ahead and just put your answer in the chat. Based on this conversation, anything you're going to do differently? What did you learn today? Yeah, close the feedback loops, absolutely. learned about a new compensation policy. Make sure you have a plan, no empty promises, absolutely. And I think the other point to make too is if you have reached out to customers, yeah, close the loop, keep them updated on what you're doing. Even if maybe there's a stall, just keep talking to them, engaging them. Engage them prior to the survey, be ready to implement, be okay starting. Yeah, be okay with not knowing everything, right? And just asking. These are great comments coming through. The compensation policy, I think, is for engaging community people. But I think, like we said, if you want to engage internal, talk to your fiscal finance person.
I like that one that's sitting at the bottom of mine right now. Without the leadership support, you can do more harm than good. I think that's,
yeah, you can. You're right.
That's
Make
like,
sure they're on board.
that might be the tagline for our after action report.
Yeah. Ask them those big questions. Make sure that they're ready to go. Well, thank you everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good to meet everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Lenora,
Everybody.
Max, and Anna for a great session.